Arms up, don't move. Brigitte freezes. The American soldier isn't holding a rifle. He's holding a cloth measuring tape, yellow, frayed at the edges. The kind her mother used for sewing dresses before the war. But this isn't her mother's kitchen. This is a processing tent in Belgium. January 1945. Snow falling outside. Breath visible. And Brigitte is one of 387 German women in American custody. Only 387 out of 500,000 POWs. She's rare, and rarity, she learned in training, means danger. Sie haben uns erzählt, was Sieger mit Frauen machen, jede einzelne Nacht. They told us what victors do to women, every single night. The propaganda echoes. Brigitte's hands tremble as she raises them. Beside her, Waltraud, 19, a nurse from a field hospital near Aachen, does the same. Her lips move in silent prayer. The American steps forward. Sergeant Collins, according to his jacket. 32 years old, maybe, a pencil behind his ear, no weapon drawn. He wraps the tape around Brigitte's hips, over her uniform, over the thick wool. He doesn't touch skin, doesn't try, just stretches the tape, reads the number, calls out to a clerk. 36 inches! The clerk writes it down. The tape clicks as Collins retracts it. Brigitte's brain stops working. This makes no sense. Measurements? Of her hips? For what? The cold bites through canvas walls. Someone coughs behind her. Waltraud whispers, "Was machen Sie mit uns?" What are they doing to us? Brigitte doesn't answer. She doesn't know. Sergeant Collins moves to Waltraud. Same procedure. Tape around the hips. Over clothes. Number called out. 34 inches. Another woman enters the line. Dorothea, 27, a factory supervisor conscripted 6 months ago. Her face is gray with exhaustion. She sees the measuring tape and her whole body stiffens. 9, she whispers, 9, 9, 9. But Collins doesn't react to the fear. He just measures, writes, moves on. This isn't violence. This isn't what they described. But it's something Brigitte can't name. The tent smells like diesel fuel and wet canvas. Her stomach churns. Her mind races through every possibility and rejects each one. Then Collins does something that rewires her understanding completely. He turns her around, gently, almost politely, and says 5 words that make no sense at all. Now we measure your spine. The measuring tape clicks as it retracts. Brigitte's heart doesn't slow down. Spine. They want to measure her spine. The word bounces around her skull like a bullet that won't exit. She turns, slowly, like he asked, faces the canvas wall, sees nothing but brown fabric and her own shadow. Behind her the tape stretches again, cold cloth against her uniform back, vertical this time, neck to waist. 22 inches. The clerk scratches the number onto paper. The sound is impossibly loud in the silence. Waltraud goes next. Same procedure, no touching, no violence, just numbers. Ich verstand es nicht. Hüften, Wirbelsäule. Das waren keine Waffen. Das ergab keinen Sinn. I didn't understand. Hips, spine. These weren't weapons. It made no sense. 94% of German women POWs expected sexual violence during initial processing. They'd been trained to expect it, prepared for it. Some had hidden razors in their boots, for themselves, not the enemy. But 0% experienced it. 0. Dorothea stands rigid as Collins measures her. Her eyes are closed. Her breathing is shallow. She's somewhere else entirely, some mental bunker where this isn't happening. When he finishes, she opens her eyes, looks around, realizes she's still wearing all her clothes. The dissonance is visible. Her face contorts through confusion, relief, terror, more confusion. Why? She whispers in broken English. Why measure? Collins doesn't answer, just moves to the next woman. The pencil scratches, the tape clicks, numbers accumulate on the clipboard. Brigitte watches the process repeat. 8 women, 16 measurements, hips and spine, hips and spine. No explanation, no context. Just bureaucratic efficiency applied to human bodies. Corporal Webb, the clerk, is 24. From Ohio, someone said. He writes each number in neat columns. His handwriting is careful, almost elegant, like this matters. Like getting the measurements wrong would be a problem. But a problem for what? The tent canvas flaps in a gust of wind. Snow swirls through a gap in the entrance. Brigitte shivers, not entirely from cold. Waltraud moves closer, her voice barely audible. They're cataloging us. Brigitte looks at the clipboard. 2 columns, names, numbers. Like livestock, Waltraud continues, for transport, for... She doesn't finish. Can't finish. Because the next possibility, the one neither of them will say aloud, is too enormous. Then the tent flap opens. A woman enters, American uniform, Red Cross armband. And she's carrying something that changes everything. A stack of paper, official letterhead, German translation attached, chairs. The word hangs in frozen air like a mistake. The Red Cross nurse, Lieutenant Evelyn Marsh, 29, from Connecticut, holds the translated document toward Dorothea. Her German is clumsy but functional. Sitzplätze, she repeats, seating for transport trucks. Dorothea stares at the paper, doesn't take it, doesn't move. Stühle? Für uns? Das musste eine Falle sein. Chairs? For us? This had to be a trap. Brigitte steps forward, takes the document. Her hands shake as she reads. U.S. Army Regulation 1944B, POW Transport Protocol. All seating must accommodate body dimensions to prevent spinal injury during extended transit. Minimum journey expectation, 12 hours. The words blur. Refocus. Blur again. Spinal injury prevention. For prisoners. For enemies. Das ist nicht möglich, Waltraud whispers. This isn't possible. But there it is. Official letterhead, Army stamp, regulation number, filed and cataloged like every other American procedure. They measured hips for seat width, spines for backrest height. Nothing more. Nurse Marsh watches them process the information. Her face is patient. She's seen this reaction before, the complete cognitive breakdown when reality contradicts training. The journey to the permanent camp takes 14 hours, she explains. Bad seating causes back injuries. Back injuries require medical treatment. Medical treatment costs money. She pauses, lets that sink in. Your comfort is economical. Brigitte reads the document again. 3rd time, 4th. The German translation is accurate. She checked every word. Hips for seat width, spine for backrest height. Economics, not humanity. But the result is identical. They won't be hurt, won't be violated, will be transported in seats designed for their bodies. Dorothea finally speaks. Her voice cracks. In our army, we rode in open trucks, standing, for 20 hours, in winter. No one responds. The comparison hangs there, unspoken indictment of everything they'd known. Sergeant Collins returns, more women to measure. The process continues. Tape clicks, numbers called, clipboard filled. But something has shifted. The fear is still present, deep, trained, impossible to remove quickly, but it's mixed now with something else. Confusion. And beneath that, the first impossible hint of something they can't name. Brigitte folds the document, puts it in her pocket. Evidence of the impossible. Then Nurse Marsh says something that cracks Dorothea completely. There's also a medical examination, standard procedure. Dorothea's face goes white. Medical examination meant something very specific in German training, something no woman survived intact. But that's not what it means here. Medical examination. 2 words, maximum terror. Dorothea backs away, hits the canvas wall. Her breathing accelerates into hyperventilation. Medizinische Untersuchung. Das war das Codewort. Jeder wusste, was es bedeutete. Medical examination. That was the code word. Every woman knew what it meant. German propaganda had been specific, detailed, graphic. Medical examinations by enemy forces meant violation, documentation, humiliation, systematic destruction of dignity before disposal. 73% of Wehrmacht women received explicit training about what to expect, what to do, how to end it quickly if necessary. Dorothea's hand moves toward her boot, toward the razor she'd hidden there 6 months ago. 9. Brigitte grabs her wrist. Warta. Wait. Nurse Marsh hasn't moved. Her face shows something unexpected, understanding, like she knows exactly what Dorothea is thinking, what she's reaching for. The examination, Marsh says slowly, clearly, is for tuberculosis, for vitamin deficiency, for dental health. She holds up her hands, empty, no instruments, no restraints. A doctor will listen to your lungs. A nurse will check your eyes and mouth. You will remain fully clothed for all respiratory tests. The words don't penetrate, not immediately. Brigitte watches Dorothea's hand, still near the boot, still ready. Fully clothed, Marsh repeats, vollständig bekleidet. Something flickers in Dorothea's eyes, confusion, overriding panic. For tuberculosis? Tuberculosis, vitamin deficiencies, dental cavities, Marsh counts on her fingers. 3 examinations, all external, no removal of clothing required. Waltraud speaks up. Why? Why examine us at all? Because sick prisoners spread disease. Disease spreads to guards. Guards spread to families. Marsh's tone is practical, almost clinical. Your health protects our health, not kindness, self-interest. Somehow that's more believable. Dorothea's hand slowly moves away from her boot. The razor stays hidden, for now. Captain Morrison enters the tent, the doctor. 53 years old, gray hair, spectacles. He carries a stethoscope and a small flashlight. Nothing else. "Who's first?" he asks. No one moves. The fear is too deep, too trained. Brigitte steps forward. If someone has to go first, has to test whether this is real, better her than 19-year-old Waltraud. Morrison gestures to a wooden chair. "Sit, please. This takes 3 minutes." She sits. He places the stethoscope against her back, over her uniform. Deep breath. She breathes. He listens, moves the stethoscope, listens again. And that's when Brigitte realizes she's still dressed, still untouched, still intact. The propaganda was wrong. But about how much? "Open your mouth." Brigitte's jaw locks. Every muscle in her face refuses. "Mund aufmachen." Das waren die Worte aus den Warnungen. Das war der Anfang vom Ende. Open your mouth. Those were the words from the warnings. That was the beginning of the end. Captain Morrison waits, patient. The small flashlight in his hand isn't moving. "I need to check for cavities," he says. "Dental problems cause infection. Infection causes fever. Fever in a crowded barracks causes outbreaks." The logic is sterile, bureaucratic, like everything else in this nightmare that isn't a nightmare. Brigitte forces her jaw open. Morrison shines the light. Looks at her teeth for 11 seconds. Writes something on his clipboard. "Mild calcium deficiency. Common." He reaches into his medical bag, produces a small bottle, 1 pill daily, with food. He drops a white tablet into her palm. Calcium supplement, vitamin D for an enemy prisoner. 67% of German POWs showed severe vitamin deficiencies upon capture. Years of wartime rationing, months of frontline deprivation. Their bodies were failing from the inside. Brigitte stares at the pill. Doesn't swallow. "It's not poison," Morrison says, mild irritation in his voice. "If we wanted you dead, there are simpler methods." Dark logic, but accurate. She swallows the pill. Dry. It scrapes down her throat. Waltraud goes next. Same procedure. Stethoscope over clothes. Flashlight in mouth. Vitamin pill distributed. Then Dorothea. Her hands still tremble, but she doesn't reach for the boot. Progress. Woman after woman. Examination after examination. No violations. No humiliation. Just clinical efficiency. Nurse Marsh records everything. Blood pressure, taken over uniform sleeves, temperature, oral thermometer, sanitized between patients. Vision, reading letters from a chart. By the 8th woman, something strange happens. The fear starts to leak out of the room. Not disappear, that would take months, maybe years, but diminish, become manageable. Gerda, 23, actually asks Morrison a question. What does calcium deficiency mean? He explains, simply, without condescension. Brigitte watches this exchange, watches an enemy doctor educate an enemy prisoner about her own health, watches him hand over medicine that costs American money. Ich verstand die Logik, aber ich verstand nicht das Gefühl. I understood the logic, but I didn't understand the feeling. The feeling was this, being treated like a body worth maintaining, not worth violating, not worth disposing, worth maintaining. Then Morrison says something that unlocks the next impossible door. Tomorrow, you'll receive your permanent camp assignments. Any dietary restrictions should be reported now. Dietary restrictions for prisoners. Dietary restrictions? Gerda's voice cracks on the words, like they're in a foreign language, which emotionally they are. Diätvorschriften für Gefangene. In unserem Lager bekamen russische Gefangene Baumrinde. Dietary restrictions for prisoners. In our camps, Russian prisoners got tree bark. Morrison doesn't understand the reference, doesn't know what German POW camps fed their captives, doesn't know about the death rates. 58% mortality in German-held Soviet POW camps, 0.4% in American-held German camps. The math isn't mercy, it's policy. Nurse Marsh sees the confusion on their faces. She's learned to read it, the particular dissonance when propaganda meets reality. You're wondering why we bother, she says, not a question. Brigitte nods, slowly. Marsh sits on a supply crate, lowers herself to their eye level. A small gesture, enormous implications. The war ends eventually, she says. Germany will need rebuilding. Rebuilding requires workers. Healthy workers, she pauses. Lets them process. Every POW who survives in good health is a future construction worker, a future factory hand, a future taxpayer who helps repay war debts. Marshall Plan projections, still classified in 1945, estimated 2.3 million German workers needed for reconstruction. POW health directly impacted those numbers. So were investments, Dorothea says. Flat, bitter. Yes. Marsh doesn't soften it. But investments get protected, get fed, get medical care. Does the reason matter more than the result? The question hangs there. Philosophy wrapped in pragmatism. Es war keine Güte, es war Kalkulation, aber Calculation hielt uns am Leben. It wasn't kindness, it was calculation, but calculation kept us alive. Brigitte thinks about the measuring tape, about hips and spines and ergonomic seating, about vitamin pills and tuberculosis checks, every action explainable by economics, every human result achieved through accounting, and yet. Corporal Chen enters the tent. Chinese-American 23 medical assistant from San Francisco. He's carrying something Waltraud hasn't seen in 8 months. A cup of coffee, real coffee, steam rising from the surface. For the patient, he says. Hands it to Dorothea. Dorothea stares at the cup, doesn't take it. Chen sets it on the table beside her. It's cold outside. Hot drinks help. He leaves. Simple as that. Dorothea's hands wrap around the cup, slowly, like it might explode. The warmth spreads into her fingers, her palms, her wrists. And then, without warning, without permission, she starts crying. Not quietly, not discreetly. Deep, heaving sobs that shake her entire body. 8 months of terror. Finally releasing. The crying is contagious. Waltraud goes next, then Gerda, then a woman Brigitte doesn't know, 31, hollow cheeks, hands that haven't stopped shaking since capture. Ich weinte nicht aus Trauer. Ich weinte, weil ich nicht sterben würde. I wasn't crying from grief. I was crying because I wasn't going to die. Nurse Marsh doesn't intervene, doesn't tell them to stop, doesn't enforce composure. She just retrieves a box from the supply area. Inside, cotton handkerchiefs, Red Cross emblem stitched in the corner. She distributes them, one per woman, doesn't speak. 89% of female POWs reported emotional collapse only after confirming they wouldn't be harmed. The body holds trauma until safety allows release. Then, everything floods out at once. Brigitte takes a handkerchief. The cotton is rough against her fingers, real fabric, not recycled paper, not battlefield scraps. She doesn't cry, not yet. Something inside her is still locked, still waiting for the trap to spring. But she watches the others, watches women she barely knows. Strangers bonded by shared terror finally allow themselves to feel. Sergeant Collins enters, sees the situation, stops. For a moment, Brigitte expects anger, orders to compose themselves, military discipline enforced. Instead, Collins turns to Marsh. Quiet voice. How long? As long as they need. He nods, leaves. That's it. No interruption, no demands. Just permission, unspoken, implicit, to be human. Das war der Moment, den ich nicht verstand. Die Erlaubnis. Das war mächtiger als alles andere. That was the moment I didn't understand. The permission. That was more powerful than anything else. Dorothea's sobs slow, gradually. Her grip on the coffee cup loosens. She finally takes a sip. Her eyes close, not in fear this time, in something approaching peace. It's real coffee, she whispers, not ersatz. A small thing, enormous implications. Real coffee for prisoners, real handkerchiefs, real concern for real backs on real chairs. The pattern builds, each detail reinforcing the impossible conclusion: they're going to survive this. Brigitte looks at the measuring tape, still coiled on the wooden table. Yellow fabric, frayed edges. 20 minutes ago, that tape was a weapon, a tool of degradation, the beginning of everything she feared. Now it's just measuring tape, numbers for chairs, logistics for transport. The transformation isn't complete, won't be complete for months, but it started. Then Marsh says something that forces the next gear shift. Your transport leaves tomorrow. Permanent camp assignment. Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. America. They're going to America. The barracks have heating. Brigitte stands in the doorway, doesn't enter, doesn't believe. Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia, February 1945. The transport took 16 hours, in seats measured for their bodies, with rest stops, with food. And now this. Das konnte nicht das Lager sein. Es war wärmer als meine Wohnung in München. This couldn't be the camp. It was warmer than my apartment in Munich. 8 grade minimum temperature in women's barracks, U.S. Army regulation, enforced daily. German frontline troops averaged 40 degrees in winter quarters, when they had quarters at all. Waltraud pushes past her, enters the room, touches the wall near the heating vent. Es ist warm, she says. Obvious statement. Revolutionary implication. 12 cots. Actual mattresses. Not straw. Cotton batting, wrapped in canvas. Army issue. Same as American soldiers used. Brigitte walks to the nearest cot, presses her hand against the mattress, gives under pressure, springs underneath. She hasn't slept on springs in 3 years. Gerda opens a footlocker at the end of her assigned cot. Inside, 2 blankets, 1 pillow, basic toiletries, soap that smells like lavender. Soap, she says, holds it up like evidence. Seife, für Gefangene. Wir gaben unseren eigenen Truppen keine Seife. Soap, for prisoners. We didn't give our own troops soap. A guard appears in the doorway. Private Williams, 20 years old, from Nebraska. He clears his throat. Mess hall opens at 700, 3 meals daily. Dietary restrictions were noted in your files. He pauses, awkward. Any questions? No one speaks. The questions are too large for answers. Williams nods, leaves. 3 meals daily. Brigitte calculates. More than German frontline rations, more than German civilian rations by late 1944. Prisoners eating better than soldiers, the enemy providing more than the homeland. Dorothea sits on her cot, slowly, testing if it's real. It holds, supports, doesn't collapse. Ich verstehe das nicht, she whispers. I don't understand this. Brigitte doesn't either. The cognitive dissonance is physical, a pressure in her chest, a buzzing in her skull. Everything they learned, everything they believed, every warning, every training, every whispered fear. Wrong. All wrong. Or was it? Maybe this is the trap, the long game. Fatten them up before the slaughter. She looks at the measuring tape's memory, at the vitamin pills now dissolving in her system, at the heated barracks and cotton mattresses. If this is a trap, it's the strangest one ever designed. Then, a voice from outside. Mail call, letters for prisoners approved, letters from home. The letter is from Brigitte's mother, 3 pages, censored in places, black bars over military details, but mostly intact, readable. Meine Brigitte, bist du am Leben? Wir haben gehört, was die Amerikaner mit Gefangenen machen. Bitte, wenn du noch kämpfen kannst. My Brigitte, are you alive? We heard what the Americans do to prisoners. Please, if you can still fight. Brigitte stops reading. The words blur. Her mother believes she's being tortured, violated, destroyed, because that's what the propaganda said, what everyone said. 91% of German female POWs reported complete loss of trust in Nazi information within 30 days of U.S. custody. The collapse wasn't gradual, it was catastrophic. Waltraud is reading her own letter. Her face changes as she processes her family's fears, their assumptions, their manufactured terror. They think we're dead, she says, flat. Or worse than dead. Gerda sits on her cot, letter unopened in her hands. She's not ready. Ich konnte es nicht lesen, nicht weil ich Angst hatte, weil ich wütend war. I couldn't read it, not because I was afraid, because I was angry. Dorothea speaks, first time in hours. They didn't just lie about the Americans, everyone looks at her. They lied about everything, about the war, about our chances, about what we were fighting for. She holds up her letter. My father says Germany will win by spring, that the wonder weapons will change everything. She laughs, hollow, broken. We've seen the American trucks, the American food, the American medical supplies. She pauses, lets the implications build. There are no wonder weapons, there is no winning. There's just this. The barracks goes silent, clock ticking on the wall, heating system humming. The truth settles over them like snow, cold, inescapable, final. They weren't just captured, they were freed from lies they didn't know they were living inside. Brigitte folds her mother's letter, carefully, evidence of the gap between worlds. Sie haben uns über die Amerikaner belogen. Sie haben uns über den Krieg belogen. Sie haben uns über uns selbst belogen. They lied to us about the Americans. They lied to us about the war. They lied to us about ourselves. Gerda finally opens her letter, reads in silence. Her expression shifts through stages, recognition, confusion, grief, anger, something like resignation. When she finishes, she looks at the others. So, what do we do now? The question has no answer. Not yet. But tomorrow there will be options. April 1947, Frankfurt, American. Reconstruction Office. Brigitte opens a filing cabinet. Inside, personnel records, work assignments, training schedules. She manages all of it now. Ein Maßband. Das war der Moment, in dem sich alles veränderte. A measuring tape. That was the moment everything changed. 27 months since Belgium. Since frozen tents and yellow cloth tape and the 5 words that started this transformation, arms up, we're measuring you. 2,847 former German female POWs now work in Allied reconstruction programs. Brigitte helped place 340 of them. Nurses, translators, administrators, skills built in captivity, applied in freedom. She keeps something in her desk drawer, has for 2 years, will for 40 more. A cloth measuring tape, yellow, frayed at the edges, not the original that stayed in Belgium, but identical. A reminder of the moment propaganda died and reality began. Waltraud works 3 offices down, translator now. Her English is flawless. Her German carries an American accent she doesn't try to hide. Dorothea runs a medical supply distribution center in Munich. 12 employees, serves 3 hospitals. She still has the razor in her boot, but hasn't reached for it in 2 years. Gerda returned home, found her family, told them the truth about American camps. They didn't believe her at first, took months. Die Lüge war zu groß, die Wahrheit war zu klein, aber die Wahrheit war alles, was wir hatten. The lie was too big, the truth was too small, but the truth was all we had. Brigitte closes the filing cabinet, looks out the window at Frankfurt's reconstruction, cranes everywhere, buildings rising, a country rebuilding on the labor of people who were measured for chairs. She thinks about Sergeant Collins, about Nurse Marsh, about Captain Morrison with his stethoscope and vitamin pills. They weren't saints. They were following protocol, policy, regulation 1944B, and medical efficiency standards and economic calculations about future workforces. But the result, the human result, was survival, was dignity, was a chance to become something other than an enemy. The measuring tape in her drawer isn't a trophy, it's a question. If you'd been in that tent, terrified, freezing, certain violence was coming, would you have believed the explanation? Would 5 words about ergonomic seating have overwritten years of propaganda? Or would you have reached for the razor? Brigitte doesn't know. Can't know. Can only know what happened next. They measured her hips, they measured her spine. And somewhere in those numbers, they measured the distance between lies and truth. The gap was everything.